I will thank Thomas.
I have to stand away from that light and thank everybody. I have so many thanks to utter. Where to begin? Let me begin by thanking Farmby for the show outside, which is an extraordinary show. So compelling is its visual reality that when I look out here with my reading glasses and a little bit fuzzy, you become one of those canvases. A canvas that is labeled outside psychedelic, but I didn't see one thing out there that really looked confused. It looked very deterministic, very art conscious. So in that sense, psychedelia has triumphed. I want to thank Fawn for that show and for allowing me to be part of it. Good answer. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sounds better, I guess. I want to thank Farmland for the show and for allowing us to be part of it. I don't know what order to move in. I wanted to just thank a few more people. Of course, Pierre, Joris, whom I've known for many, many years. He doesn't want to be known how many years I've known him. And Peter Cockelbergh, whom I've met only a few times, that Belgian scholar and poet, I think. I want to thank, in terms of this book, the essays, which Pierre has just spoken, I want to thank Tamas Panitz, a poet, and Cassandra Seltman, another poet, who did wonderful work on it. Cassandra, after I had been deploring my helplessness, literal helplessness, in terms of getting this manuscript typed, said, well, I'll type it for you. And she typed something like 300 or 400 pages, typewritten pages out of my incomprehensible scribbles. And at the end, I found one typo, an extraordinary, she is Cassandra, I don't know if she's here, but she's just had a book out as a little while before Thomas has had a book out, Thomas Panitz, called Blue Sun, both of them from Impatient Press, of Michael Anzoni, whom I should thank also for publishing them. Yeah, sometimes it's more important to have them published than to have oneself published. It really is. Thank you. So all these thanks, Pierre, for doing this, for making me aware that there was something like this, that there were 760 pages worth reprinting out of a lifetime of evading the task of writing essays. As you must understand, and I want to assure you of this, that I have always avoided essays. I refused to write them. People would, starting out in graduate school, when I said, no, I will not write a master's essay, no, believe it, goodbye. A decision, by the way, which never seemed to have affected me in any material or pragmatic way at all. I hope that's not a bad example. But I've always had difficulty writing essays because I don't understand the meaning of continuous text, why you would want to go on and on and on and on. So it always pleased me it was to say something and then say something else, and then say something else, and then say something else, until you ran out of things to say on any given topic. At times I've tried. I wrote a long essay review of Louis Zukowski's book, A, when the first edition of that came out. That book was so important to the Commonwealth that it needed some celebration. And I went on and on and on and on about it, and because Lita Hornick, who ran that magazine, Culture, wanted a long essay, so I wrote a long essay. But by and large, over my life as a writer, the gap between the essay and the poem is very, very small, if at all, there. Pierre and Peter have included in this work things which I thought were poems, like sections from The Loom, or sections from a series of texts called Texts, which just because one of them went on for 20 pages about Heidegger, they took that to be an essay. And I guess they're right, so I think about that. What is it, an essay? Essay, to begin with, was a word that meant an attempt, and we still say that. He essayed this, he essayed to do that, he essayed to leap from one place to another. So an essay is an attempt. And an attempt is at relevance, at coherence, at saying something, not at persuasion. And I think the bulk of academic essays, I don't mean to blame anybody, but the bulk of academic and political and everything else essays seems to be persuasive. Let me say that the Greeks regarded the goddess Peitho as the most sinister deity of all, the goddess whose very name means I persuade. Think about the difference between persuasion and telling, between persuasion and knowing. Anyway, so I try to rescue essays from my own tendency to persuade, to convert, to proselytize, whatever it may be. Anyway, let me read a few from this and then go to talk about Nathlie's wonderful pictures and the way in which they forced me to speak. I'll start out with the most proselytizing piece of all. I think I can. I have a lot of eye trouble these days, so forgive me if I murmur. Snow jobs we have got, riding out over the whine of the not unjustified universal bitching about specialization in sciences and scholarship as a bad thing, is the fact that there can be, and at historical times has been, now is, a scientist of holistic understanding, a scholar, a scientist of the whole, the poet. Be aware that from inside comes the poet, scientist of totality, specifically to whom all data whatsoever are of use, world scholar, maybe, from which infer the triviality of current tremors. Is that they are not interested or interesting themselves in anything like everything. It must be everything. Pound, Goethe, Coleridge, off the top of my head. Greatness from the breadth of their concerns, i.e., one, if only one, that breadth. They do not have hobbies. They eat everything. To index, breadth of radiance and splendor. Poet as world scholar, holist. Poet here equals maker with words. I've tried to read that as it lies on the page, that is, with a lot of pauses and separations, to exemplify what I meant by the poem and the essay falling together in some way. Pierre liked, and I liked, a piece of prose which purported to be a description of what I saw from my chair. Now you must understand that essays begin by someone speaking to others unknown of what that someone is looking at or thinking about. So I thought, what more personal and yet at the same time more humble, simple method would be than to write what I see when I look up from a particular chair that I happen to be sitting in. Well, it went on for several chapters with lots of footnotes. So I'll read you one chapter and some of the footnotes, give you a sense of that. There's another sense of essay as talking about what is there. You might think of Georges Perec and the Espèce d'Espace piece of his, where he sits looking out from a certain cafe and talks about what he sees there. I hadn't known that piece when I wrote this. Years ago I didn't know about Perec then. I live in an old house that has no address. The house is dark most days. Years ago it had a name taken from the two lime trees that block out afternoon sun from the front windows. trees much sought by bees in May and June. Tea is made from the flowers. Especially at the front of the stairs it is dark, bottom of a dry well. On the wall above the last few treads is a large map of the kingdom of Bhutan, Brookyul. In that uncertain light that at times falls on this map from the opposite, from the tan spread of Brookyul, isolated from the uncolored surround, India, China, Tibet, sometimes resembles a large cookie, or at other times a fallen leaf, which before withering crumpled into crests and gorges. In one corner of the map, there is a smaller replica in outline of the map itself. This diagram is called a reliability index and shows section by section the confidence that we may feel in the percentages that the viewer can guess from the information sketched or verbalized in the large map. It is to be wished that every map conceded in such a way the inevitable inadvertencies of its parts. To the left of the map, and somewhat above it, there is a fierce, grinning, bright, polychrome demon mask of unspecified origin, clearly the product of some tantric intelligence and the mountains, Bhutan, Tibet. Believers identify the mask as the face of an adept holding back his semen, resorbing his orgasm, swallowing the world. The face is the brightest object in the hall at the foot of the stairs. That's the first chapter. There are some footnotes here, but the footnotes get very, very long. As footnotes should be. They should be intensely scholarly. Pierre suggested that I read this rather more recent, not very recent, piece. I must say that Pierre and Peter have done a wonderful thing with this book. They have arranged it in a non-chronological way, so that for me too it's an excitement to read it. Of course, they don't say, the development of his ideas about blah, 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 but rather they have organized it into sections of particular kinds of relevances. Rather like the wonderful anthologies that Pierre and Jean Rothenberg did for the Poets of the Millennium a few years back, several volumes of which are again comparably organized, where all the work of a given poet is not to be found in a chronological place, but might be a poem here and a poem there, depending on the relevance of the large theme. So they have organized this in terms of large themes, as if to say, Kelly, this is what you did. This is what you really meant. The fact that you believe in chronology, that you grow older year by year, unlike everybody else, the fact that you do that is a mistake. Really, we have found out what you're really doing, where the pieces really belong. So it's extremely exciting for me to, in that sense, to look at this. So here's the last piece that Peter suggested I read. My dear, my favorite person, for you, all my life is work, and all my work is play, and you can read me or look away. I'm reading the first sentence of a text called To the Reader, so in this case I could say to the hearer, but to the reader. Such power you have to command me, and such beauty, that to you I would over and over pour out everything I think, everything I can hear, everything I hear, the words whisper, every sound that I can steal. Truly, you are my mother, for who else would I talk to with such confidence of being well heard? All the beauty I know is what I find in you, or that you find. You are my father, my lover, and my child, and I'm nothing without you. I'm concerned to examine in practice how, through the composition of poems, the organs of enlightenment begin to open, begin to work for the benefit of all, not just the talker. The poem shapes itself in syllables, breath, patterns, deep metabolic rhythms it borrows from the writer, signal of what is personal, body, transcending itself into what is shared. Speech, the deep sound of language, the blood of society, the archaic mystery of phonemes, always focused, currently, precisely, urgent semantics of everyday meanings, and all the magical guesswork of the mother tongue that reveals the mind. Not just, or especially the mind of the individual writer. The poet is someone with nothing to say. The poet is someone with nothing to say. What is revealed in the poem is the mind of all beings who use language. Locally, this language, this American, the mind of life speaks us in detail for and to which language is responsible. In the condensing text, the poem works all the ordinary and extraordinary knowledge that comes its way from our researchers among libraries, annals, archives, dreams, meditation, ritual, introspection, argument, analysis, love-making, daydreaming, looking, remembering. Then the musical powers of syntax, all our listening, line structure, sound, begin to act the poem. A poem is activity, a nest of deeds which the reader and writer share, transpersonal, unpossessed. I'll stop there. And the business of collaborating with an artist is very exciting, and it's grown more and more important to me. The first artist I collaborated with was an Austrian painter named Brigitte Malmflecht, who, from her drawings, faxed to me from Italy or Austria, I wrote poems, which later became a book called The Garden of Distances, published only in Europe, in Austria. The next collaboration was with the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, who had died some while before I began to collaborate with him. But screw that, I thought. What is death to a friend? So his poem called Mandell seemed to be a thing I had to work with because I had had similar experiences in similar parts of the Alps. And so I began to write into Mont Blanc. So collaboration took that form. With Brigitte Malmflecht, it took the form of writing in response, always in response to her drawings. With Shelley, it took the form of impregnating his text with my stuff, working into his text. So those two forms of collaboration were exciting to me. But then there were other events along the way. But when I met Nathlie Provosty at that celebrated Levi Strauss winter party, when Levi and Gret have a bonfire that people leap through or fall into, or God knows what happens, and there's snow and so on. Was it last year or the year before they had? Never mind. But when I met Nathlie there, I was so impressed by the pictures she showed me, or I saw online. The woman herself was direct and immediate, and as you saw a moment ago, there was no fuss or flurry about her. She simply spoke. And I was impressed by that. So when I went to look at her work, I was amazed and delighted by the complexity that she got out of non-figurative black and white, as it seemed to me. That's, you know, what it's like to look at something on your device or on the computer. When I saw things like this is the first one I saw, what was overwhelming to me was the way in which color seemed to be implied or expressed without being present. So when I finally started writing about her work, particularly to one other print called The Color Mill, I read it called, but I thought a little bit of Duchamp's The Chocolate Mill, the Moulin Chocolat, but because of the way in which that was clearly not something that produced chocolate, this is something that did produce color, a mill from which color arose. So I was haunted by that. I began to feel that her work was which was very, very powerful graphically, also had this other peculiar quality of a sort of spiritual, forgive the word, this sort of nasty word, you know what I mean, kind of spiritual, psychic, maybe, energy that flooded the black and the white with something else, something more deeply powerful. So I couldn't stop looking at them, and I started writing. And then, as she said, we formalized our collaboration, and I'm glad we did. Now, Todd has brought out this extraordinarily beautiful book, which has poems of mine in it, and the poems, thanks to Walter Chu's work, are legible and pretty and almost apologetic on the page. Look at that. You look at this. Zang! The eye goes to that. And I said, oh, well, there's some stuff over here. And that's just how the collaboration should be. Prima la pittura, dopo la poesia. I had said to Brigitte in my best Italian. First comes the picture, then comes the poem. Now, Nathlie tricked me a little bit because she made reference to something I thought I had seen in her work, and I wrote a poem called Chemic, thinking I was writing to her work. But then she tells me, no, the work came from the poem. Well, I'll leave that to the historian to figure out, but I know certainly everything I wrote in this book was in response to the power of her work. I want to read two pieces. One, the title piece itself, I'll read most of. Most of? Most of? Yeah.
Or all.
Hmm?
Or all.
Mm-hmm. The Color Mill. Well, good. Just look at it. Steel, the tower, trapezoid. It is the Spanish Civil War again, a dawn made out of steel. I was born on the Long March. I grew up in the cry of Catalunya, and some of it I knew. That's where I come in, looking at the interminable war. In Spain, they had a way of turning sound into a solid. Here it is, a dull blade stabbing the heaven, and you hear. Everybody heard, for miles around from the large loudspeaker, exponential horn on a truck back that bellowed the truth and made it sound like lies. I love you, sing the fingers to the flute. I run away from love, for love's sake, the flute replies. We need to be where only silence comes. A flower on a mill, a tarot card without a naked lady, a sound in black and white. You can build this gear to get to heaven.
You got to me instead. But who is speaking? Into the hopper poured late summer days, mill to grind them, brands and awns fall away, work of winnowing to leave the colour pure, unspoken, the name enough to dazzle me, the name of a colour, its skin plus skin. We sit and think our secret thoughts, happy with the sense of being somewhere we can name. But this world is only breakfast before something else. You know me. I keep seeing faces I don't measure, I don't compare. I live in the faces of those I behold. I see a soul intent on seeming, its eyes and lips disposed to be and seem good. The complex image arrayed, everything becomes a face. Easter Island, the gloomy lepers, all that's left apart from faces. Faces, giant faces, little airport, stone faces, studying the sky 1,000 years. Why did he die, Allende, if he really did kill himself? A man doesn't fail when it fails, the thing he's made. No point in dying, dead men tell no tales, but all a man is good for is the tale he tells. Sink full of laundry and nobody buy it. Things take care of themselves. Thinking washes us clean. From a sink of dirty clothes an Asiatic flower grows, its blossom undistracted by the soil below. We are more than where we come from. A flume of acid runs down through the earth. No place is the same we've been. Things take care of themselves. Is that a lie? The Asian flower balances a hummingbird, and no time passes. Is time a lie that color tries to heal us from? The earth is delirious with us, and the drunken flush of evening besets the articulate day. This is me, holding you against the wall. What wall? Your will. How hold? By seeing and by hearing. Clutch. The spoken sign never lets go. You hold also to my hearing. I have a will too. It is summer, it is raining, the color of everything is exactly what this is. No fakery of sunlight. The rush of rust. Colors march around the void mind. The picture came up the stairs, became the door, then opened herself, came into local space and said, I am all angles, my edges are everywhere, I am the core of what you think. If you think, if you don't, you are the ground on which I figure, I fugue, I am adorable, I am design, love, measurement, I am the last sign you will read. Then, let me end by reading the poem called, not that one, Cockelbergh, the one that Nathlie thinks the picture came from the words. I don't know what came from what, but they're certainly close to my mind. Anyway, Cockelbergh, a little shorter than the last one. I can't have everything, but I have everything. A schoolboy listening to Sibelius, an old man listening to Ornette, a girl eating peaches, peach gum on my fingers, all over trees, hills of petaluma, chapped lips, tulip tree tossing in the wind. I summon you to bear unfeigned witness. God is what keeps waking up in you. a kind of rhyme. Woman on motorcycle, amarillo, yellow, east, against the course of sun. Empire, mud puddle, glamorous sunlight poured over uneasy trees. All that agitation, they're hurrying me along, my everything, say everything, get it all in place. The pillow fight in Canaan, how I sat once on the curbstone in Atlantis while the soft cloth chariots rolled by in green, things sang on rails. How sick I was, how libido is a mad jar, sometimes can't unscrew. Lawless China, blue rain in the Prater. I.O. is something can't be made. Hymn to God in my sickness. I can take strength only from saying quietly the names of things. Finglish is my mother tongue. Je vous salue. An opal crescent in the dark half-moon tide. The music rats in our pond, all gone. But the years are back, and foxes many, and the queens of Egypt pose in drenched chlamyses to demonstrate the contours from which we come. The body is absolute geometry. Wave break, in silver, almost city light, a corner is a precious thing, an alphabet of birds. You could spend all day writing down what they fly. Dress well, and the children, a kind of ball game. There are tea leaves in your hair. I wanted to be part of myself like a post office, part of the geography. Look for the cantilever bridge over the mild Delaware. The cathedral was coming to visit. Long grain rice spills out of Aladdin's attaché case. Theft is the ecstasy of law. The cavern is money, empty. Art is flood. Leave your heirs that old stuck crocodile. I took the mass of unknown lead and set it up in a porcelain saucer in my mind. Then, in the hour when the crows fly up, concentrated my mild attention on its luster, dull, peaceful gray. As I was seeing, the head was responding to being seen. Things do. So it wasn't long before it shouldered down and began shrinking, its mass moving lustful in upon itself. Watching it made it go faster. The shrinking mass took on a cubic form, denser. The plate cracked from the concentration. Such weight, the cube glowed now, turned red, then white, then red again, finally yellow, deep. It was small. You can do this too. Pure gold. Thank you.